History has been made over the past 24 hours as Donald Trump becomes the first ex-president of the United States to be found guilty of felony crimes after leaving office. And this has completely blown up over the internet. Everybody's talking about this, whether you be from the US or anywhere else in the world. This is one of the biggest stories to come out of the past 24 hours, and rightfully so, because it is absolutely mind-boggling, and what happens going forwards has left everybody scratching their heads. So unless you've been keeping yourself under a rock for the past 24 hours, you probably will know about this story, but for anyone that doesn't, former President Donald Trump was convicted on the 30th of May 2024 for 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. This conviction marks the first time ever a former US president has been found guilty of felony crimes after leaving office, and the charges stem from Trump's involvement of a scheme to falsify business records and conceal illegal activities specifically related to payments made during the 2016 election campaign to silence allegations of extramarital affair. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the testimony of Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, who detailed how Trump directed him to make the payments and then reimbursed him using falsified business records. Additionally, the prosecution presented circumstantial evidence showing that Trump was fully aware of the scheme and its implications. The jury's unanimous verdict came after the deliberations began on May 29, 2024. Following weeks of testimony and closing arguments delivered by both the prosecution and the defense. Trump's sentencing hearing is scheduled for July 11, 2024, where he could face significant penalties. So that is all that we know so far. But, of course, that's just where we're at. But there have been, of course, the Republicans versus the Democrats. So the Republicans are obviously on the defending side because that is who Donald Trump represents. And the Democrats are the ones that are kind of pushing the legal ramifications against Donald Trump. So in the eyes of the Democrats, all right, this is the statements that they've made. Michael Cohen's testimony, so that was brought into question. So Cohen testified that Trump directed him to make hush money payments to silence allegations during the 2016 campaign and falsified business records to cover it up. The prosecutor's evidence. So the prosecution presented circumstantial evidence indicating that Trump was fully aware of the scheme and its legal ramifications. The rule of law, so the Democrats emphasize that the conviction underscores that no one, not even a former president, is above the law. Transparency and accountability. They argue that holding Trump accountable is necessary for maintaining the integrity of the democratic process, and then the legal process. So the conviction was based on thorough legal proceedings, including a jury trial that found Trump guilty beyond reasonable doubt. So, of course, that was the kind of arguments that were used to go against Donald Trump. But, of course, the Republicans have tried to counter those allegations made. So these are the statements that have been made by the Republicans. So Cohen's credibility was brought into question. The Republicans argue that Michael Cohen, a key witness, is a convicted liar whose testimony cannot be trusted. So that was the first thing that they brought into question. Political motivation. They claim that the prosecution is politically motivated, aimed at damaging Trump's reputation and future political prospects. Trump's defense. Trump's legal team contended that he relied on his lawyer's advice and was unaware of the legal implications of the action taken. Media bias. So the Republicans believe that the media has been biased against Trump, influencing public perception and the judicial process. Selective prosecution. They argue that similar actions by other politicians have not been prosecuted, suggesting a double standard. And, I think there's good arguments made on both sides. So you're probably wondering what next, because that's exactly what I wondered. Well, it has been confirmed today that Trump will be appealing against this historic conviction. Of course, without a shadow of a doubt, that was inevitable because this is by far one of the most pivotal times during the presidential campaign because, you're on the build-up, you're trying to win over constituencies, or I'm not sure how it's worded over in the US, but in the UK, it would be your constituents. You're trying to win over the people to get them to vote for you, and to appease them for your presidential campaign. And of course, this coming at this time is quite significant because this is arguably the most pivotal time when you're trying to build up and rallying voters. So for this to kind of come out of the woodwork, it could work against Donald Trump, of course. So, of course, the argument to try and appeal the conviction was inevitable because Trump is going to want to try and put the conviction away, to have it overturned, so it doesn't go against him for the presidential campaign. So where are we at? So, well, it has been said that he will be appealing the conviction. So during his approximately 40-minute speech, Trump confirmed that he plans to appeal his conviction. And he was quoted as saying, "We're going to be appealing this scam. We're going to be appealing it on many different things, complaining that there was a conduct of justice from Juan Merchant." And he was also quoted as saying, "He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant." So obviously those are very bold and aggressive terms that were used against the judge in the case. And obviously Donald Trump believing that it was a bit of a farce that he was convicted. But again, from the UK looking in, I'm very curious, and obviously not really being aware of the whole political kind of climate regarding this entire situation. I am going to ask my American audience to answer some questions because I'm so invested within this and I can't really find the answers online. So I thought I would put them to you, the audience, to see where we sit with this, because what happens next is obviously the massive lingering question, and you might be better informed to answer it than anyone else. So the first question that I had, I've listed them down so I don't forget any. So it's about 10 questions I've got. So how can a former president be tried and convicted after leaving office? So, I mean, I guess obviously it is possible for him to be convicted because it's happened. It's interesting that is what's come up, and you know, it's never happened before, so you know, I guess that question was already answered. But the next question I had was, can he still run for presidency despite the conviction? So imagine this appeal doesn't get overturned, it stands. Will he still be allowed to run for presidency? If not, what happens next? Also, what is the implication of this conviction against Trump's political future? So, for example, if the conviction still stands and the appeal doesn't go through, for example, what happens next? Will Trump be told he has to stand down? Will he have to leave the world of politics forever? Will he still be allowed to be a politician but just not a president? What happens there? Like, where does Donald Trump stand at this moment in time? Imagining that the appeal obviously hasn't gone through yet. Where does he stand? My fourth question was, can Trump pardon himself? So imagine he wins the election, all right, regardless of everything that's happened. The appeal doesn't go through, the conviction still stands, but he still manages to win the presidential campaign and he becomes president. Can he give himself a presidential pardon? I mean, I remember when Donald Trump was first coming into office and the show Tiger King had just blown up on Netflix. Joe Exotic had been sent to prison. And there was, you know, Joe Exotic had asked out for Donald Trump to give him a presidential pardon to get him out of jail. Obviously, nothing ever came of that. But could Donald Trump pardon himself if he becomes president and the conviction still stands? Is that something that he's legally allowed to do? And if so, what's the ramifications of that? And how would you feel if he pardoned himself? Just out of curiosity. Does the conviction mean that Trump will go to jail? Obviously, he hasn't been sentenced, he's just been convicted. So the sentencing doesn't happen until July the 11th. But in that time, what happens after? If he's convicted, the appeal doesn't go through, and he's sentenced, could he be facing jail time? Or would it just be fines? Would it be sanctions against him? Maybe his businesses might get sanctioned. Maybe he will be sanctioned in the world of politics, meaning he won't be able to go forward as a potential presidential candidate. what would that look like? My sixth question was, now obviously Michael Cohen, a lot hinged on his testimony, obviously being the ex-lawyer of Donald Trump. But I've done some research and found out that Michael Cohen was a convicted felon. Now, why was he used in the trial, and why was he such a big part of the trial, even though he's been basically a convicted liar? So why, obviously that surely puts the seed of doubt in the minds of the jury, right? But a lot hinged on his testimony, and it was one of the biggest playing factors into why he was convicted. So why was that included? Just out of curiosity, again, I just want to understand the process. My seventh question: what are the specific charges? Obviously, we know what the specific charges are regarding the 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. But how severe is that in the world of politics? In the US, how severe is that deemed to be? Of course, it's not on the level of murder and, SA and things like this, but where does he stand with this? How much of a black mark against his name is this? How does the conviction affect the Republican Party? Of course, he's the figurehead of the Republican Party right now. And I'm just thinking in terms of British politics. We've obviously got the Labour Party and the Conservatives going head-to-head at the minute for the general election in the UK. Obviously, the figureheads being Rishi Sunak for the Conservatives and Sir Keir Starmer for the Labour Party. But where does... Obviously, if one of those were to step down for whatever reason, it would mean that there'll be a shuffle around of the parties and someone else would become the figurehead. But what does that mean for the Republicans? Are people voting for the Republicans because they're the Republicans, or are they voting for the Republicans because of Trump? And if Trump was to be told to stand down from his position and there was a reshuffle and someone else takes figurehead and they were to become the president if the party wins, where does that sit them? Would they be in favour? Would they be in less favour with the people that would have voted for them? How does that look for them? Just out of curiosity. Could Trump appeal the conviction? Obviously, that was a question that I've now had answered because he's going to appeal it. And the final question is, how does the American legal system handle cases involving high-profile individuals like Trump? Obviously, he is globally known, not just for being a politician, but of course, being a businessman. He's been in multiple movies as, not like as an actor, but just as an offshoot person, like a cameo. But how does that look in terms of the legal standpoint? Like, does this case kind of take... Obviously, it's notorious now. It's huge. It's like Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, like levels of popularity. But how does that influence things? Obviously, there could be a political sway in the judgment. There could be a political sway in, a lot of things, really. I mean, you could argue, obviously, the judge and the jury have to be impartial and base their opinions and base their verdicts on the information at hand. But that's very difficult to do in a political landscape, and with the idea of someone who's due to be your next president. So how does that look? Just out of curiosity again. And the reason I ask these questions is because as someone from the outside looking in, not being involved with the political landscape of the US, obviously whoever becomes president in the US doesn't really affect myself, but it does affect millions of people over in the States. So I'm just trying to get in the minds of the people that are going to be affected by this, potentially moving forwards. I would love to know what you think of this whole situation and how these questions kind of filter into, does it affect what your vote? Does it affect who you're going to vote for? And anyone from any other part of the world that may have questions regarding this for our American audience, please drop them down below. And American audience, if you wouldn't mind going through and answering the questions, respectfully, then we can all learn about this situation, because, of course, I can only learn from almost British or American media. But the arguments made about the Republicans, that the Republicans made, sorry, was that the media is being biased against Donald Trump. So therefore, I'm not getting a fair representation of the actual case at hand. I'm getting what the media is giving me. And that could sway my decision. They could say that Donald Trump's the worst person on the planet, and I could just believe that. But instead, I want to take it to the people, and I want to ask these questions. So please get down in the comments and answer these questions if you may. I would love, and thank you so much in advance for answering the questions. And while you're down there, be sure to jump to the hell out of that like button if you have enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, and tick on my little bell so you get notified whenever we upload to this channel. And until next time, guys, I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll catch you in court. Peace.